On this channel, we help you earn more, spend less, and build lasting wealth. We're gonna hop into this content, but do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell to let YouTube know you want a notification when we roll out the next video in this series. Okay, let's get into it. So, the financial equation says what you earn minus what you spend is equal to the difference, the gap. If you're paycheck to paycheck, that means there is no gap. You need your paycheck just to make it to the next paycheck. But it's an equation. You have two options. You could earn more or you could spend less. Ideally, you do both. In reality, it's easier to start with one or the other. In this episode, I'm going to give you 5 reasons that you should start with spending less. 1, you can do it immediately. Think about this. If I were to tell you, hey, go earn more, go pick up a side hustle, go deliver pizza, get a new skill set and roll into a different sector, go pick up an extra job, there's a lot of obstacles between here and there. Not that it can't be done and not that you can't ramp it up rather quickly, but the reality is you might be looking at several days, maybe even several weeks to get this new revenue stream consistently flowing. Some of the businesses on the internet that are marketed as the most passive in reality require that you front load, and this is a literal term, they require that you front load a crap load. Yes, scientifically proven, a crap load of work. Passive is not passive. It typically just means separated from your money. Your time is separated from your money. Not saying we shouldn't pursue that, but you don't want to start there. Let's see if there's a way that we can spend less, because you can do that immediately. I'm going to follow up with just a couple examples. Number 2, it's tax advantaged. What do I mean by that? When you earn more, let's say you go get a side hustle and you're earning an extra $100 a week, $100 a day, whatever it is, every $100 that you earn could be taxed at a rate up to 30%, or maybe even more, depending on the marginal tax bracket that you find yourself in, depending on the state that you find yourself in. There's a tax implication for every extra dollar that you bring home. So if you earn $100 and between your state and federal tax, 30% of that is taken away, then you're only bringing home 70. So there's an inefficiency there to earning more. Now, it's great to earn an extra $70 that you weren't gonna earn, in this alternate reality. But if instead we figured out how to save $100 because we go through some of the line items I'm about to mention, you get a dollar for dollar return on that savings, making that the second point for spending less. Point number 3, when you reduce your monthly recurring expenses, that means when you do inevitably start focusing on earning more, every dollar you earn will actually go farther. It will represent a larger percentage of your take-home pay. It acts as an amplification. Let me tell you this, it's crazy. There are many, many people out there that earn $100,000 a year. There's individuals that earn $100,000 a month, and they are paycheck to paycheck. If you're making, a 6-figure salary and you're paycheck to paycheck and you try to go earn more, an extra $100 isn't doing anything for you. But if your life only costs a couple $1,000s a month and you can bring home an extra couple hundred, it's going way farther. So by focusing on our recurring expenses first, we allow the inevitable increase in income to go much, much farther. Number 4, it allows you to turn risk into opportunity. Keeping your cost of living low is a superpower. What do I mean by that? Again, going back to that example of a person whose life cost $100,000 a year or more. For that individual, if their revenue goes away, it's terrifying. They have to figure out how to keep their revenue super high to be able to afford to make it to the next paycheck, right? If your life only cost $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, 3, 4, whatever, if your life cost a fraction of that, then you don't need to figure out how to replace as much income. That means that you can afford to take more risk. Maybe a job that in the long term, like a passive income opportunity, right? A passive income opportunity, maybe it's going to require a lot of work on the front end. If you're paycheck to paycheck on a 6-figure salary, you can't afford to lose that paycheck. But if you have savings, if your life doesn't cost as much, maybe you can actually make a choice to do something that pays less, but has a better long-term outlook. This is how you take what for some people, for that other individual, might look like risk, you turn it into opportunity. I did this in my own journey. My choice to focus on Choose FI instead of being a pharmacist with a corporation was largely predicated on the fact that I paid off all my debt and my life didn't cost that much. So when I pivoted from being a pharmacist to being a full-time podcaster, that was predicated on not having a huge cost of living that I had to replace and not having any debt. You're reducing the costs of your life and you're enjoying the benefits from that now. The ultimate luxury is not stuff, it's freedom. And number 5, this might seem a little contrived, but it's true. When you spend less on stuff, the money that you do spend, you appreciate more. So hear me on this. If you have pizza every single night, if you have steak every single night, you no longer really enjoy it. You're just doing it. You're just going through the motions. Whatever that stimulus was, as humans, we are conditioned to get normalized, to be normalized to whatever that stimulus is. And that can work for us, but it also can work against us in the form of hedonic adaptation. Our bodies are heavily conditioned to become accustomed to the cost of living to which we have come to expect. And we don't really appreciate the stuff we have anymore. So everyone says you only live once. And what's implied in that is, in many cases, especially from like a marketing background, is, hey, don't worry about it, you can afford the payments. And you can't. You simply cannot afford the payments on everything. If you can't afford to pay for it in cash, you really can't afford it. Very few exceptions on this. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of all the things that we could afford the payments on, that we could afford to finance, and that will allow us to focus and really value the things that we actually do make the choice to purchase in full. Take a look at hedonic adaptation in your life. Take the emphasis on what you're getting this month and go back and look at all the stuff you already have. If you were to go back and look through the closets full of junk that we possess, the things that at one point were those must-have items, do you appreciate them? Do you value them? Are you glad that you purchased them even a year or two later? Have you used them over the past 12 months? This is a real opportunity for us to just remind ourselves that we have conditioned ourselves to love the process of purchasing, but we don't really enjoy the actual having the item. And the sooner we realize that, the more valuable that lesson is. Now, this video is about 5 reasons to spend less. As a bonus, I'm gonna give you 5 ways how. What's funny is this is the how, but this is not comprehensive. This is easy, right? But it all starts with knowing how much your life actually costs. Do you have any idea what your monthly recurring expenses are? I took a look at mine, and what I came up with is my burn rate. How much money does my life cost each and every month? I look at those recurring expenses, and I also look at the discretionary expenses. Those two make up, my purchases on a month-to-month basis. So on my discretionary purchases, let's start there. Could you do a no-spend month or a no-spend day, a no-spend challenge of any amount? Do you have to spend money every single day? If your answer to that is yes, your life has gotten very expensive. There's probably a way to reel it in. Let's focus on an experience instead of stuff. An experience doesn't have to cost anything. And you can be creative with what you choose to spend your most precious resource, your time on. You don't need to be clicking around on Amazon all day long. It's gonna get expensive. There's certain items that you need. You need groceries, you need food, you have to pay for your bill. I mean, there's all sorts of expenses that are not discretionary and you need them. How much of them is another thing. Let's take a look at our grocery budget. For many people, this ends up being the black hole that just envelops your budget. Any extra dollar you have tends to go to the grocery store. So let's start there. What is a reasonable amount of money to spend on a per person per meal basis? Now, my friend Brad, who does the Choosify podcast with me, he uses a metric called $2 per person per meal. That means on average, his family spends about $2 per person on each meal. So let's do the math here. If as an individual, you eat 3 meals a day, that's $6 a day, 30 days in a month, you spend $180 per person. It's you and your spouse, $360. Now, let's say that that's just super intense. Like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine only spending $180 a person, or $360 for me and my partner. Fine, let's double it. Double the amount. Go to $4 per person per day. And in that case, you're looking at $720 a month. I know many families of 2 to 4 that are spending several $1,000s a month on their groceries because they aren't anchoring themselves to what's a reasonable price to pay per meal. You could go to Cheesecake Factory and spend $22 per plate per person, or you could be at home and make the exact same meal yourself for $4 or $5. The point here is that it's not that you're eating all steak and caviar or all oatmeal and eggs, which are very inexpensive, but rather you find the blend of what you're eating out versus what you're eating at home, expensive ingredients to inexpensive ingredients, and you find a balance that allows you to approximate, with a pretty liberal room for error, $2 per person per meal. And if you're going out to eat 3 or 4 times a week, and between your meal tab and your alcohol tab, you're at $50 per person, you can't do that very often and maintain any semblance of a normal budget in the grocery and food budget. It's just that simple. Life is about balance and moderation, and when you even take 1 or 2 of those benders out of the way, you can save hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. Another one is pay off high interest debt. So if you are sitting on credit card debt, using a credit card to make it from one paycheck to the next, and you can afford the $35 a month payment, You really can't. Credit cards have usually an APR, an interest rate on them that hover around 18%. This is great. 18% is great when you're making 18% on your money in the stock market. I would love to make 18% year over year. But if you're carrying a credit card balance, you're getting hammered, and compound interest calculations are working against you. Pay off your credit card debt. And aside from that, outside of credit card debt, sometimes you're looking at refinancing. Sometimes you're looking at other debt you have, maybe a personal loan, car loan, student loan debt, home mortgage. These are debts that are pretty frequent. A lot of people have this type of debt. There might be a way for you to refinance. And if you haven't checked rates recently, they are at an all-time low right now with everything that's going on in the world. You can actually check to see, maybe I can get my interest rate down from 7% down to 3%. When you're saving 3% a year on a pretty hefty sum of money, you're saving a lot in monthly recurring expenses. So these are our thoughts. 5 reasons why you should focus on spending less and 5 ways how. Like, comment, subscribe if you got value, ring that bell. And here at Choosify, we're here to help you earn more, spend less, and build lasting wealth. We'll see you next time.